Hello, welcome to our advanced breakout on methods and team boards. So remember, we really do want to keep things interactive. So the chat, go ahead, type comments and questions throughout, and we'll take Q&A at the end of the session. So now I'd like to invite back Jeff Maffa, CEO and President of Oros Knowledge Systems, to take it from here.
Thank you, Amy. Let me just allow some screen sharing here. Here we go. All right, let me just start off by saying, normally in the in-person conference, this is an extremely interactive session as opposed to the general sessions. However, we can make that happen. I'd like to do that. I want to capture your questions and answer, give you the information you need about team boards and methods. There's a lot happening, at least in Oros IQ, on team boards and methods, and I want to get all that stuff out there. But the main point of this particular session is, methods as a mean to activate process. Method knowledge packets, they're a specific kind of knowledge packet where the model is a process instead of constraint or heuristic. Methods can contain other types of knowledge packets. We'll show you some examples of that. And then we'll get into team boards, how team boards can organize the entire knowledge-aware process for a team, and then how methods can drive the team board, kind of circling back to that. Okay, let me see if I can get over here to discussion. So if you type in a discussion, I hope I'll be able to pick it up. So just kind of type what's on your mind, and I can try to answer in real time. I'm also going to do live demonstration here, which is notorious for having things go wrong. So we'll just see what we can do. Live is better than video. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about. Looks like I missed a slide already. We're going to talk about methods, and a method is a unit of process. And it looks like the process wall here. And then we're going to talk about team boards. And I want to explain what a team board is. A team board is a virtual war room for a team that enables the knowledge-aware process cradle to grave. Okay. So when I say it's a virtual war room, if you think of a war room, it's a meeting room. If you're familiar with the concept, that you go in, and there are different walls of reports and status and what's going on. And everybody on a team can kind of get a 360-degree view of what that team's doing, right? And literally, there were war rooms during World War II where the battle plans and things like that were there. So what we've done is we virtualized the war room, and then we virtualized these walls. And there's a wall dedicated to timing, a wall dedicated to process, a wall dedicated to assessment, issues, reports, and there are several other walls available to you. I'm only going to talk about these 5 for now. And I'd really like to spend some time on talking about how the process and timing wall interact with each other, because you can only get that with a knowledge-aware process. So again, I'm just going to show you some pictures before we do the bulk of what we're going to do today as a demonstration. So we have a master team board that has a master method wall. This is the team's process, the process they're trying to follow if they've got one. The timing chart, the Gantt wall, which interacts with the process wall, so the team can calendarize their deliverables and objectives and gateways. An assessments wall, which is one of 2 Kanban walls that we have, which visualize the work being done, the assessment getting done, and quantifies it based on how much assessment is getting done. A lean Kanban for issues, so minimizing work in progress, getting issues visualized, where's work that needs to get done, where is it getting done, and how often is it getting done. These kinds of things, burn down, are concepts on an issue Kanban wall. And lastly, but not only, is the reports wall, where we can pin KPIs and custom reports that the team reviews, and they're all real time with the data that's being collected by the knowledge-aware process. Okay, so now we're going to get into demonstrations. All righty. Oops, I just killed my window. Let me try that again. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about methods and creating a method. And what is a method? A method is a type of knowledge packet that captures process knowledge. So many of you that have been out using Oros are familiar with the basic kind of knowledge packet, and some of you are experts with these kinds of method knowledge packets, but I think more of you are, yeah, as I mentioned, are starting to come up to speed with knowledge modeling, and one of the forms of a knowledge model is a method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say, I'm going to come over to the menu here and I'm going to create a new knowledge packet. And there are different kinds of templates I can choose from in this particular community. There are 4 that have been defined. You know, the decision model, the process model, the design standard, and a requirement. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to concentrate on this process phase method. So basically a knowledge packet that defines process of what we do and how we do things. And again, it could be, you know, product development process. It could be how do we buy off a piece of equipment on the plant floor. It could be anything like that. But we're just gonna kind of talk about that, how that happens. So similar to a knowledge packet, a normal basic knowledge packet, you know, you can title it. Now we know this is not just a basic because it has a whole chapter here dedicated to something called the method model, right? And so what I'm going to do is the bulk of this demonstration for methods is just show you how these things get created. So it's not intimidating. It's very much like running out a Visio diagram, developing a Visio diagram, but you're actually creating an actionable, executable model of process. So when you start the editing process for the method, you have a canvas, fairly typical. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start by taking a shape, okay? And I'm going to build out a real basic flow chart. I'm just going to say I got one process element. It's going to go into another process element, which is going to go into a decision, which then goes into another process element, which then goes into a calculation or decision. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to put this into its own process style. And if after that, we're going to go over here, back to the start. Okay, so I've just laid out a real simple process flow with a few process elements. I'm just going to pretty it up a little bit, space them out evenly, align them, pretty basic. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of define what this process is. I'm going to go ahead and start to call out what these step names are. So to name the step, I'm just going to call it first step. I'm going to call that a definition phase, and we can write in all the things that we do in definition, and I'm going to leave it step type, which is one of these step types, which define the modeling characteristic or the modeling behavior I want on the step, and I'm going to leave it as basic. Basic just means it's complete or it's incomplete. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to go to the next one, and I'm going to do a risk assessment here. Okay. And I'm going to make this one a type assessment. And as soon as I've made a type assessment, it knows that I'm going to expect the user to do an assessment, and I'm going to give them the content of its assessment by adding a set. So this is an advanced session. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these concepts I'm talking about, but I'm going to put a set which defines how the knowledge packages are going to be provisioned for this end user to do the assessment. So I'm going to add a set, oops, add this set into it. And now, delete that. Now, whenever an assessment gets created on this step, it's going to pull, it's going to have knowledge provisioned based on criteria, and currently that's these 4 knowledge packets. So now I've automated the process of that step to create an assessment, apply it. I'm going to then put a decision in here. So I'm going to change this over to branching logic, and a branching logic tab just set up. And I'm going to say acceptable risk, make it a question, right? And I'm going to quickly define that. as, I'm going to take this, make it a little easier to see. I'm going to ask the question again, acceptable risk. And I'm just going to make that a yes or no question by setting the column type to yes or no. And if the answer is yes, I'm going to output, I need to finish this off first. Let me go ahead and do that. Apply. Let me just go ahead and say that this is the let's call this the CAE optimization kickoff step. And I'm going to make this a type issue. Now, all this will start to make sense when I actually show you this method working. I'm just setting up a very basic one with examples of all the different types of steps you can have. And here I'm going to make this one logic. And I can customize the logic, basically an evaluation of a value table, if you're familiar with value tables. And instead of customizing it here, or writing that logic here, I'm just going to inherit it from another knowledge packet. So I'm going to say the logic isn't going to come from the step itself, but from a different knowledge packet. And I have that one pre-written right here. And so this brings in a value table to execute as logic on that step. And let's just say not acceptable risk. Things to do. And I'm, again, just for simplicity, I'm going to leave it as a basic. Okay, so I've just created an actionable, traceable, trackable model of knowledge where knowledge is being provisioned. So let me go ahead and say apply, save. I'll leave it in WIP. And let's try out what we just created. I'm just going to do a search, list all, because it's easy to find. It's at the end of the list. Just reverse sort. Here's the one we just created. So Susan said, I'm sorry, I just looked over here. Susan said, what did you click to get the shape chooser to open after ending the connector? It automatically appears if you don't connect it to something else. So you can try that. If you grab the connecting arrow, the circles will show up on the shape when you hover, and when you drag away from that shape, a menu will appear from which shape to automatically place on the canvas. So you don't have to keep dragging shapes from the palette. It'll automatically, ask you which shape you want to put at the end of the connector. William asked, can you upload Visio Flow into a method KPAC? At this point, no, but we have discussed doing that. It shouldn't be that big of a deal for us to do, although we have some modeling structure that we have to put in that doesn't come with Visio, so you'll still have to wind up editing the method once it's inside of Oros. Thank you for asking the questions. I'll keep looking. Feel free to keep asking. So this is the method we just created. It was really simple. And obviously the first step here is definition. I didn't really put much detail in here. If I double click, I could see the images, the attachments, the model, the text. I didn't really do that for simplicity's sake. But when we complete a basic step, we tell it we're complete simply by checking the box. And the model now is tracking us through the process. I'm telling, as the author of this method, that the next thing you're going to do is a risk assessment. And to do the risk assessment, you have to complete an assessment, the contents of which is completely dynamic, right? So when I gave it a set, the set knows how to collect the KPACs to do the risk assessment, so that when I actually do the risk assessment, I click it, it's asking me for the context of the risk assessment. I'm just going to say create, and it's going to ask me for a project. And what it's done is it's just created the assessment. And that assessment can go out to other individuals or teams of individuals that then can complete the assessment. So completing the assessment, right? Most of you know how this works. I put in a 2, put in a 5, and this one's, a parametric kind of rule. I've just failed that knowledge packet and it's filled out fail for me, right? Or I can attest, right? And as that happens, This step now is tracking that. Now I'm not in an assessment to track it, but if I were, I'd have a flow chart or a pie chart showing me how much complete that assessment is. So that's being done. And when it's complete, I can evaluate that assessment and come to the acceptable risk. And based on the outcome of that assessment, we can make decisions. Is risk acceptable? No. Evaluate and close. It goes to not acceptable. Let's say that we came out okay. Okay, now we go over here, optimization CAE. And just as an example, I created a different kind of step. Let me just look. Do we get any no more questions at this particular point yet? But we can have a step of type issue, and that tells the user where you can create an issue. So this could be a work order to create a CAA test or something, or an optimization or a bench test, or maybe to correct an issue, get CAD to work on something like that. I'll just create a design issue here. And if there's an issue template that's been created, it's automatically tied to this particular step in this particular method. I'm not going to put anything too complicated here. Oh, I need an assignee. I'll assign it to myself. Oh, I'm rushing through this, kind of got ahead of myself. Oh, I put myself in as approver. And now I've created an issue that's tied to the step. And we're not in assessment, otherwise it would be here. It would be tied to the step. I can mouse over it and I could see the issue. We could see it getting its work done. And finally, I have another step type here that's going to evaluate based on some logic. So again, I tied a K-pack to this step, and it has some acceptable deflection that we found from our CAE optimization. And let's say that was 2 millimeters. Great job. That was acceptable. If it came back at 7 millimeters of deflection, it's orange or yellow, marginal. And if the deflection, it came back larger, red. Right? And you can see the halo changing color. And this isn't meant to be a process that is something that you would see every day, but I'm simply trying to exercise the different elements of a method that you can place in a sequence that would be meaningful to you. An assessment, an issue, a branching logic, an evaluation of some kind of model-based evaluation, like in this last case. Okay, so this is a method. It's very easy to do. And oh, Alexander just asked a question. How can we convince people to digitize data and team boards be used to increase work efficiency? It's a really good question, Alexander. I can say that with respect to team boards, if the knowledge packets are there and assessments are being done, people seem to really like team boards. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of convincing that needs to happen, right? But you need to do the assessments and understand issues and knowledge packets first. You got to start to have a knowledge-aware process before you can automate the knowledge-aware process in team boards. Sometimes you can show them the end game, and that entices them to do the other things, gets them going towards a vision. But I would say we haven't had a lot of problem with getting people to use team boards that were at least somewhat familiar with assessments and knowledge packets. Okay, I'm going to change gears now, and let's look at a more practical example. So this was just an example of a method to show you the constituency that you can create with a team with a method. Now I'm going to show you how it gets used in a team board. So I'm going to go what's called portfolio view of team boards, where each card in this portfolio view represents a project, a team's project. So I got another question from Bill. can that deflection parameter be linked to an output from another KPAC? For an instance, CAE puts the simulation results in their assessment and feeds into this one. You got it, Bill. That's exactly what happens. There is, in essence, a blackboard to which any system, bench test, CAE, CAD, can write parameters, and that diamond, reverse diamond or triangle will evaluate against the parameters that have been posted there. So humans can put the parameters there, digital models can put the parameter there. They all can do it all at the same time. In fact, it's fairly common to have mixed modes where different elements are being written by different tools, digital. And as we embrace digital transformation, the possibilities of automatically evaluating knowledge using this technique are going up very quickly. So yes. Carrie says, can multiple instances following the process be happening at the same time? Assuming the process may take a few days, others might need to follow the same process with different results. It depends on, Carrie, what you really are asking. Certainly, the same process in multiple different projects can go on simultaneously, can go on concurrently. There's no problems there, right? Everything is segregated by project very cleanly. Within the same project, different phases can be tracked separately, but yet concurrently pretty easily. The trouble gets when you want to have multiple loops of the same process and you want to track and keep very detailed track of each time through the loop. Now, there's other ways of doing it, but actually just keeping it as a loop and tracking it, how many times you went through the loop, we're still not there yet, but we'll get there, if I'm answering your question correctly. Okay. So this is a grouping of team boards. Each card here represents a team board. I'm going to go into one called Max Power.
And Jeff, just a quick heads up, 2.5 minutes left in the session.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm not going to get to all the things I was going to do, but thank you, Amy. So basically what's happening here is what's really interesting about our team boards here is that your methods can have things called checkpoints. I didn't show you this, but the checkpoints are logical process elements that can define themselves against other checkpoints as well as milestones coming from the project. So if I look at this project, there's a couple timing elements, and these could come from a top-down timing system, or they could come from a Gantt chart or Excel or from your product direction letter. And then the timing of the logical process specific to your team can be offset or derived from these top-down processes. So we call this bottom-up timing. And then we can evaluate our ability to meet program timing based on our team's plan. So think of this up here as this upper section is the timing that is outside our control being given to us by an external entity, by program timing, by our customer, by whatever. And here's my team's plan, and these timing elements, each of these diamonds are logically aligned into the process through the method, right? So this one is 15 days prior to business development complete, we have to do our FQ start, right? And so as all the dates change from the logical model of process, they change in the timing view of the process. And that's really what I want to show you, because only oral IQ does this kind of stuff, where you can have a logical view, a method, template, a process. Every time we use it, it's calculating the specific dates based on my project specific timing and what we're doing on our project and how we want to execute our project. And then we get this team view of deliverables. As I mentioned, the assessments wall is just a Kanban board of all the different types of assessments we might do. So you might be doing DPA assessments, FMEA, design review assessments, and they're all visible here of what's been done, what's been checked. An issues wall. And I think there's 13 seconds left, so I'll stop now. I'm sorry I did not get through nearly what I wanted to get through, and I thank you very much for asking the questions you did. And again, as Amy said, be happy to answer your questions if you just email me.
Yeah, so it looks like we do remain live, though we don't want to go too far over. That was my question behind the scenes. Do we just get cut off when the session ends? It looks like we didn't. But yes, contact Jeff if you have more questions. I put the survey link, so please go ahead and click that to give your feedback on this session. And then next, we will be heading to our second breakout sessions beginning at 2:15 Eastern. And again, you can choose beginner or advanced track. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Jess.
Thank you.